Hi, today we are going to look at how to represent knowledge in frames. Frames. What is frames? Frames is one type of scheme that we use to represent knowledge in many AI applications. Frames provide a convenient structure. It can represent objects, and it is a typical representation because it can look at the common concepts and situations. Just like semantic network, frames can also be organized in a hierarchy manner, with the general concepts on the top and some specific concepts placed at the lower levels. However, frames represented knowledge more richer than semantic networks because it can eliminate many of the nodes that are existed in semantic network. A frame is a good choice to develop a system with mechanical devices, for example, a car. The values described in one object can being grouped together into one single unit and being represented in a frame. A basic frame design will have these two most important information. The first one is the name. In this case, the name of this object is car. This object is represented in a frame with the name car and some attributes. These attributes, are also called as slots, will have values. For example, slot transmission, the value is automatic. Slots color, the value is blue, and so on. So each slots will have values. These values can be specific, can be default, can also be inherited from a parent frame, or it can also be appointed to another frame. Besides that, this value can also be a procedure that will come out with the value at the end. Each slot describes two kinds of knowledge. We can represent declarative knowledge, as what we can see here, or we can also describe procedural knowledge. Procedural knowledge means there are some activity in one of the slots. This value, also called as facets. Facets describes some knowledge or procedures about the attribute in the slot. Let's see. Here we have two kinds of frames. The first one is the class frame. And then the class frame will be the parent class, and it will be inherited. All the attributes here will be inherited by the instance frame. So whatever you have here, the instance frame will also have the same attributes. So the class frame and the instance frame representation is just like object-oriented presentation, which we have the parents and the children. Okay, so the first class frame usually represent the general characteristics of the object. Meanwhile, the instance frame will have more specific instance of the class frame. Each of this frame will have their own attributes and facets. Some facets are still unknown here. When it represented in the child or instance frame, it will have more specific value. Types of facet here can be in many kind. Sometimes we have a constraint value, default value, range between some values, and we can also have procedural knowledge here. The procedural knowledge can be if added procedure, if removed, if needed, or if changed. Sometimes frames also has inheritance issue. We can see here in the class frame bird, the value for fly is true. However, an instance frame Tweety, which is an instance of a bird, suppose that it inherits the same characteristics of flies. However, Tweety cannot fly. Therefore, we have to change the value here to solve the problem of inheritance. In this case, the truth value true becomes false. With frames representation, we can have a very complex structure. For example, here we can see we represent the first class frame as bird with some attributes in it, and it can have lots of instances. For example, Robins is a bird, so whatever attributes from the class frame will be inherited to Robins. For example, you have bird 1 or bird 2, which are Robins, so bird 1 and bird 2 will inherit the value from the class frame bird. Frame has lots of advantages. It is actually easing the process of representing the knowledge rather than semantic network. It is fairly intuitive and it represents the knowledge more natural, like how we do it every single day. Okay, so frame is also similar to human knowledge organization, and it is suitable for causal knowledge. We can see what caused what by looking at the inheritance of the knowledge. It is easy to include default information by having it in the class frame and pass the information to the instance frame. And we can also detect missing values on the line. It is easier to understand than logic or rules because it is represented in a graphical form, and it is very flexible. However, there are no standards about frames representation. Therefore, the subclass sometimes will be different from the superclass.